Hey there, global citizens. Welcome back to the Global Talks, your podcast dedicated to uncovering the joys and challenges of global citizens. My name is Joana, and I am with Global Citizen Solutions, a boutique investment migration consultancy, helping expats to find their ideal citizenship by investment program outside their birth country. So, today we will talk about trends in migration and why one should invest in a second passport. Having a second passport could help you to travel, invest, and reside in places where you never thought you would visit before. Should you and your family need to leave your home country, either for emergency purposes or just for an extended period of time, a second passport gives you the freedom and security you may need during these times of political, economic, and social unrest. So, to explore the topic, we will speak to Jeff Opdyke, an American financial writer and investment expert based in Prague, Czech Republic, who has written for various publications such as the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and is now an editor at International Living magazine. And also joining us is Joana Mendonca, head of legal at Global Citizen Solutions, for the important take on legal immigration and citizenship by investment. Jeff, online, and Joana here in our studios. Welcome. Really nice to have you here. Good. And Jeff, can you hear as well? So shall we start with Jeff? I think it would be good for our viewers to know a bit about you, where you come from, and your background. So can you tell us a bit about you, please?
So I spent 17 years at the Wall Street Journal back in the late 90s to the mid 2000s, and then I was a investment and economics writer for an international investments publication, just traveling all over the world for about a decade. And now I work for International Living as one of their correspondents, one of their chief correspondents. I'm based in Prague. I moved here back in 2018 because International Living basically said, pick a place to live in Europe and go. I was like, okay, if you're gonna force me. And so I basically travel the world for those guys. I basically travel the world for those guys as an investment writer and as their sort of roving expert on citizenship by investment, the golden visa programs, the digital nomad visas, citizenship by residency, all the kind of things that, people use to go grab second passports and visas to live in various countries that are not the United States.
Great. Okay. So we will learn more about your journey to Prague as well. And but let's go step by step. Joana, can you tell us, it's the second time I think you join us at a podcast, but I think our viewers also deserve to know a little bit about you. You are the head of legal at Global Citizen Solutions, and how long have you been working with international migration?
Thanks for having me, first of all.
Welcome.
So about me, I've been a lawyer for 13 years. I have a background with several areas of law, including litigation, but I've been working with immigration for the past 12 years. When I started immigration in Portugal, was just traditional immigration and citizenship. The Golden Visa in 2012 boosted this area, and it became a major area right now. So since then, I've been specializing in immigration, not only in Portugal, but across the world.
Across the world, okay. And I guess you like it. Is it a topic you thought you would be working with?
No, at all.
No. Okay.
Because we don't even learn about immigration in law school. So I just started working with some foreigners that wanted to obtain permits in Portugal, and then I just started understanding the area, and it just became my main point of interest in law.
Interesting. It's funny how life guides you to different paths, and you end up working on something that's actually very relevant in this day and age. So yes, thank you. And I think we can now start. I'm going to ask Jeff. I'll start with Jeff. And Jeff, you are a financial reporter and you've covered a lot about investing and personal finance for the Wall Street Journal, for Forbes, and I read one of your articles where you compare having a second passport to owning stocks or bonds, and you even you coined a brilliant term called geopolitical diversification. Can you elaborate a little bit more on this thought?
Yeah, so one of the premier tenets of investing in general is the idea that you want to diversify your assets across stocks, bonds, cash, real estate, whatever. I would argue the exact same principle should apply to citizenship and to residency and to passports, because even though the U.S. is a top tier country, and there's huge demand for a U.S. passport, the reality is the situation is that countries change over time, political dynamics change over time, financial systems change over time, banking systems change over time, and we're seeing that at play in America over the last decade, as the divide between left and right grows increasingly wide, and I would argue probably unbridgeable. And there's already talk in America of some of the challenges there with states wanting to secede, and just all kinds of issues in America that raise questions about stability, honestly, which raises questions about the stability of the U.S. financial system and the U.S. dollar, given the fact that the U.S. dollar is the primary currency in the world. So if I'm an investor, I want something that's going to give me access to another country just in case my life in America or anywhere else really goes pear-shaped, and so diversification, passport diversification to me is a way of accomplishing that. If I have a passport for an EU country or pick a country that I can use in the event life in America goes bad, I have an exit. Right now, if you have just a single passport, and I'm just picking on America for the second because I'm an American, but it applies to Europe or wherever. If you have just a single passport, you are tied into that financial system, that legal system, that banking system, that monetary system, that, the governmental system. Everything is tied to one little, you have one egg in one basket. And if something goes wrong, how do you get out? And we saw that at play in COVID, when basically Americans were persona non grata in much of the world. You couldn't use an American passport to get into many places. But if you'd had a second passport, you could have easily used that to exit America to go somewhere else. So to me, having a second passport is simply lifestyle diversification.
Yeah, no, it totally it makes sense, and I must say a lot of our viewers are from the USA, so they will relate to what you say. We have a Global Citizen Solution. We create a passport tool, which is called the Global Passport Index, and the USA ranks as the best passport in the world. So it is a very strong passport in terms of mobility, in terms of many factors, investment, and so on. But in this day and age, given all the political and socioeconomic changes, Americans are looking for a way out. And do you have anything to add, Joana, on that? Perhaps from the perspective of our clientele here?
Yes, I fully agree with Jeff. The passport, a second passport, is an asset. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. And people are looking for this new asset because it unlocks a new kind of freedom. For people within European Union, we have access to several countries with just one passport. So anyone from the outside of the European Union that obtains one European passport unlocks the access to several countries too. And this is a huge asset right now, because it's not only having access to a different country to live or to work, but to several different countries. I think this is why, and US citizens are an emblematic case right now. I think this is why US citizens are looking for European passports right now, because it's a great asset. Yeah. Even though they have one of the greatest assets, probably the best passport, it's not enough right now, mm-hmm. because we live in a globalized world.
Yeah.
I'll
Definitely.
add to that. Let me add one quick thing that, the U.S. is a strong passport without question. Whether or not it's number one, I would argue with that, given some of the freedoms that other countries have. But
Yep.
America, owning just a U.S. passport actually limits you financially because of FATCA, the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, which basically tells Uncle Sam is telling the world, hey, if you have an American on your books as a client, you have to give us all that information. It's one of the most hypocritical things America does, because if another country goes to America and says, hey, you have a Portuguese in your bank, give me that information, the American bank is going to say, scram, we're not going to give you that information. Uncle Sam demands it from other banks around the world, which means other banks and institutions, brokerage firms, crypto firms, whatever, they blackball Americans for the most part. Unless you live in a country, you're not going to have access to banking there. So as an American citizen, I hit this problem all the time, because all I can show at the moment is either an American passport or occasionally my Czech residency visa, which some places will accept, many places won't. So it limits me. Even though I have a theoretically strong passport, I am limited financially in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. So now we know we will delve into what a second passport could mean to you. I mean our viewers. But before, I want to explore a bit more about Jeff's journey from the US to the Czech Republic. So you are on your own path towards a second citizenship or a second passport. Can you share with us this journey?
Yeah, so my background, my mom worked in the airline industry, and so I used to, as a kid, I would travel the world for free with her because she had all these reciprocal free travel agreements with all these airlines globally. So I
Those
grew
are
up a
amazing
citizen of the
times.
world. Yeah, it was really nice. So I grew up a citizen of the world as a kid, and I've been to like 75 countries so far on 6 continents. And I've always wanted to live in Europe. I've always felt a little more European in the way I approach life. And so I had the opportunity in 2018 to move to Europe, and I've been around, probably 60% of Europe at this point. And I knew there were a couple of countries that were really high on my list for places I might want to live. And so I did a bunch of research, and I ended up in Prague, for reasons we can dive into if you care about. But I wanted to be here. I wanted to get outside of the U.S. I wanted to live a different lifestyle, and I want to have. I'm in the pursuit of a second passport, whether it happens in the Czech Republic or Portugal or Uruguay, which we can dive into at some point. I want that second passport. So that's one of the reasons I've moved to Europe.
Okay, so if it doesn't happen in the Czech Republic, if you're not comfortable in sharing, because obviously there are many variables when you are planning a path to another citizenship, but if it's not happening, let's consider it will happen in the Czech Republic. So tell us, I just want to give some useful information to our viewers. How do you think this process will take? How long it will take? How hard it was for you to apply for residency there, and so on?
Applying for residency in the Czech Republic is actually quite easy because I used a firm here, and I came in. There's a process in the Czech Republic that a lot of the passport media, I'll call them the visa media, they get wrong. They basically say the Czech Republic has a digital nomad visa, which is absolutely wrong. Czech Republic does not have a digital nomad visa. They have what's known as a živnostenský list, and that is not for foreigners coming to work. It is for anybody who wants to be in the freelance trade. That could be a Czech-born seamstress or a painter who doesn't work in a normal job. They're on the živnostenský list as a freelancer. So I came in as a freelancer. I just happened to be a foreigner, and they allow foreigners to get onto the Živno list, as it's called. So I came in and applied for the Živno list. When I got approved, that gave me the right to apply for temporary residency in the Czech Republic. That's good for a year. Like I said, I've been here since 2018, so I've passed 4 years now. After 5 years, you can then apply for long-term residency in the Czech Republic, and another 5 years after that, you can apply for citizenship and a passport, which is an EU passport, which is what I particularly would like to have for, all the various reasons that anybody wants an EU passport, namely that you can live anywhere you want in the EU. And there's a lot of places in the EU I'd love to live. But the challenge there is that there's a reason only 10 million people speak the Czech language. It is an incredibly difficult language to pick up, particularly for somebody who comes from an English language background. The U.S. State Department ranks it on the scale of 1 to 4. It's 1 or 1 to 5, whatever it is. It's one of the most difficult languages for English speakers to pick up on. For that reason, my wife and I are considering, relocating to Portugal, because I can barely get by in Spanish, which means I can probably barely get by in Portuguese when it comes to applying for a visa. But more importantly, a digital nomad visa, or even the D7 visa in Portugal, after 5 years, I can apply for citizenship and a passport in Portugal, and I happen to love Portugal. So over that same, 5 years from now, I could apply for the Czech Republic, or 5 years from now, I could apply for Portugal. Which one is going to be easier on me? Probably Portugal, because I think I could do the language a whole lot easier than I can in the Czech Republic. Even though I love Prague, it's a great place to live.
It's a beautiful place, but yeah, I totally get it. It's the language is a difficulty. Joana, do you want to add something about the language test in Portugal?
Yes, of course. So the language test is not that hard.
Okay, good. Okay.
It's not that hard. Actually, we have a video about it, and it pretty much explains how the test, the content of the test. And I believe, especially for someone that already understands a bit of Spanish, should be very, very easy. It's A2 level. You can do it in Portugal, or you can start learning. I always tell our clients to start learning during the residence process, because we have lots of schools abroad, and Portuguese schools certified by the Portuguese government. So you just can start learning while you're only a resident, and take your test in Portugal or outside, and it will be easy.
Okay, yeah. I agree. I'm a native speaker of Portuguese, and but yeah, my husband also went to school to learn some Portuguese, and he said it was very easy, easier than he thought it would be. Okay, so good to know, very good information you two shared for our viewers. Now, I'd like to ask, it's a question for both of you about trends in migration, and do you think immigration is boosting the second passport, or it is the second passport that is driving immigration, second citizenship, or however you decide to name the movement of people looking for another citizenship?
I would say it's a mixture of both, relative to where the person is coming from and where they're going. And by that, I mean, if I'm an American, and we've already seen the number of Americans expatriating, the number of Americans giving up their passport, their home passport, their American passport, renouncing citizenship, et cetera. Those numbers are increasing. They've been increasing for at least since 2015, 16. And so in that particular case, it's that the desire for a second passport, a non-U.S. passport, I think, is driving that immigration. You could say the same thing out of Russia, Ukraine today. The desire to have a non-Russian, non-Ukrainian passport is driving immigration and driving the desire for a second passport there. On the flip side, there are obviously a lot of people coming from, let's call it developing countries. I'm not using that in a pejorative sense. Less advanced countries that want to go to places like Europe, that want to go to places like America still. And so that immigration, and it's a different form of immigration that's driving, the desire for second passports in those various countries.
Yeah. And Joana, why do you think, sorry, I'd like you to answer the same question, who comes first, the egg or the chicken? But I also want you to weave in some thoughts about why is this such a relevant topic in this day and age, the second passport?
Okay, about the egg and the chicken, it's very hard, but I have to say that differently from Jeff, the majority of my US clients, they don't want to relinquish citizenship. They want just an exit strategy right now. Most of them, even when I mention the tax impact of relinquishing US citizenship, most of our US clients, they just say, okay, I'm a proud US citizen and I just want an exit strategy and then we'll see. And some of them are just looking for a residence permit because they want to, again, the exit strategy, and the passport comes as a bonus. So I would say that most of our US clients, they are driven by immigration, and citizenship is a bonus. But I think that right now the trend is citizenship boosting immigration. Because people are not only looking for necessarily for relocation, they are looking for. It's a long game. It's not something immediate. They want to happen. They want to happen immediately. So
Joanna's right. We call it Plan B. I mean, I'm not going to relinquish my U.S. citizenship. I'm not going to renounce citizenship and give up my passport. I love being an American too, but I do want Plan B just in case. It goes back to lifestyle insurance. Just in case something goes crazy stupid back home, I want a document that basically says, hey, I can live here permanently in some other country.
Exactly. This is why I believe for U.S. citizens right now, it's they want, first of all, an exit strategy, and the passport is a bonus. They're not looking necessarily for the passport. Some of them say, okay, if the test is easy, if I can manage to learn Portuguese, then I will ask for the passport. If not, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay, I had a question for you on that point, but I think you kind of answered it, because you coined a term internally, which is preventive migration, based on the experience that you had with the US citizens that are searching for a second passport. So do you think this is basically the scenario where they are taking this preventive measure for, is it a plan B? Why do they need this plan B? You basically said that, but are there other elements happening?
No, this is a very interesting topic. I love this topic. So I have clients right now asking me for Plan B and Plan C.
Okay.
Some clients are not even comfortable with the idea. Maybe Europe is not enough. Maybe I need to add some of the Caribbean or something else, or Middle Eastern residence permits, something like that. So U.S. citizens, mainly, they are looking for assets and new plans. And every time I always ask our clients, what's the goal with the Golden Visa or the D7 or Digital Nomad? I always ask them for the goal. And usually, U.S. citizens are concerned with mass shootings, foreign policy, decisions from the Supreme Court, elections. They are worried, and most of them don't want to relocate immediately. They just want the Plan B to be in place for them to escape quickly if they have to. So I think, as we were saying, this is a new kind of freedom that people now have. This used to be the immigration, especially immigration by investment, used to be something for the elites. It's all about yachts and mansions and very rich people, and we all thought they were just avoiding taxes. That's over. It's not a matter of foreign shopping anymore. Now everyone is looking for these options, and it's not necessarily people, ultra high net worth individuals. Everyone is looking for this, involving relocation or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think that's one of the misconceptions that a lot of people have about folks who are looking for citizenship overseas and passports overseas, there's this misconception that it's a tax-related issue, and the vast majority of the time, that is simply not the case at all. It is a lifestyle issue, and it is a Plan B preparation issue. And I was speaking at an international living conference in Atlanta, I think it was back in October. And I can't tell you how many people came up to me, just average Americans. These are not like super wealthy Americans with yachts and things like that, just average Americans, business owners, small business owners, things like that, who realize that a mom or a grandmother or a dad or whatever, parents or grandparents, come from some particular country in Europe, and their spouse has a parent or a grandparent for some particular country in Europe, and they want to know if they can get, a passport in country A, and then the spouse gets one too, and then the spouse can get one in country B, and the original person get one with the spouse. So both spouses are pursuing passports in different countries, so that each spouse can now have two passports from Europe or wherever. There was a lot of people asking me about those kinds of questions. So it tells me that interest in America among Americans for finding their heritage overseas that would allow them to have one or two passports from some other country is growing pretty dramatically. I haven't seen that in the conferences I've spoken at in the last 10 or 12 years.
Yeah. Do you want to add something, or do okay? I do. It's really a brilliant contribution, Jeff, because it brings me to our next point. And we talked about the motives and the reasons why people are looking for Plan B, nationals of the US, of any other country as well. But now we need, I think it's time to cover the pathways, how you can get your second citizenship. And it's very natural when you think about, well, I want to live in Europe, so how do I do that? I need to look at my great-grandparents' marriage certifications and birth certifications, because you think of European citizenship. But there are also other ways. But I would like to start with the citizenship by descent, which is an interesting topic, and I would like to throw some numbers here because they're always useful. This information is from the Investment Migration Advisor. In 2016, in the USA, 133 million Americans reported being of European ancestry. But there's also in Latin America, there are around 220 million of 40% of 220 million people are of European descent, and nearly half of them live in Brazil. So that tells a lot about the shifting of movement that comes from, could have stemmed from the world wars, also from colonization and so forth. So, Joana, do you want to talk about it? What do you think would be the pathway to search for your for citizenship by descent?
Okay, so Europe is very interesting in this point. As you said, European countries colonized territories overseas for centuries, so the European blood is all over the world. And also just with this, mainly with the Second World War, we had a huge exodus from Europe to different countries. So once again, European families, European blood, European names, widespread. Again, this is why Europe probably is the greatest provider of citizenship by descent. And lots of European countries have this option, because we know in Europe that we have people all over come with an European origin. We have inside Europe, we have, for example, in Portugal, it goes up to 2 generations. Mm-hmm. If you make sure that someone up to 2 generations in the direct line was a Portuguese, it will be enough for you to secure citizenship by descent. But in some countries in Europe, you can go 3rd generation or more. Sometimes it depends if it was the parent was the male or the female. Some countries have these differences, but I think probably the vast majority of European countries have this option of citizenship by descent.
Okay. And second, third generation as well. Okay. And so just to add, in Czech Republic is the second generation to qualify for Czech citizenship by descent. I've got this list here, so since I'm here, we'll just say Portugal second. And one that's very common in the USA, in Argentina and Brazil is Italian, is the third generation. But there are some other details there that goes into the mother heritage as well. Do you have anything to add on this topic, Jeff?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I really wish the Scottish people, the UK people would go farther back, because I went to this whole ancestry.com thing just because I wanted to see if I had somebody close. I'm actually, my 21st great grandfather was the King of Scotland. So
Charles II.
yes, yeah, he was the
wow.
Robert King of Scots. Robert
okay.
II.
Okay, so that's what was based on my history degree. By that I mean watching Braveheart a few times. So yes, I think Charles II was the one, the son of Queen Anne, that was the queen of the Great Britain, but the last one was Robert the Bruce.
Yeah, well.
So anyway, I need to watch Braveheart again.
I'm highly upset that A, I don't own land in Scotland, like a castle maybe, or B, that I can't use Scottish royalty as a reason to get a UK passport. But beyond that, I think ancestry.com is really interesting, and I don't work for them. I'm not pitching them or anything. I'm just saying that it's an interesting way for Americans to begin tracking some of this stuff, because it's so easy and efficient, and you can figure these things out. Like you mentioned Italy. Actually, Italy goes back to great grandfather, if you can prove that. It's one of the few countries that goes great. So there's a lot of options across Europe for this. And if you look at the Austro-Hungarian Empire, there is some rules tied to that, where if you can prove that a relative came directly from the Austro-Hungarian Empire before it broke up in 1919, you may have a path to citizenship in particularly Hungary. They've given away 400 or 500 residency or citizenships based on this Hungarian Empire thing. So it sort of pays to check that kind of stuff out and really sort of track your own ancestry, because there really are a lot of opportunities for Americans who may not realize that a great grandfather or grandmother or wherever came from Ireland or, pick a place, Hungary, and that they're eligible for a passport that is actually an EU passport.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. So highly recommend you guys to start researching your birth certificates of grandparents. But there's also, when we talk about heritage, there's also, I think it's important to mention the Sephardic Jews of the Spain and Portugal. Yes, Joana, can you tell us more about it, how it works?
Yes, of course. Portugal and Spain, I think the program in Spain is not currently working, but in Portugal it is. Portugal grants citizenship for anyone who can show that they belong to a line of Sephardic Jews, being Sephardic Jews, the ones that were expelled from the Iberian Peninsula by the Inquisition. Mm-hmm. So this is also something common in Europe. The country apologizing for some wrongdoing in the past, granting citizenship. This is also something common. It happens because of the wars, the colonization, all the geopolitical scene we had going for centuries here. So there's a lot to apologize and a lot of links that were lost, and I think countries try to make up for that.
Okay, so that's a good point. And how do you go about it? Do you need to it has to do with a local community of
Yes, in the
Jewish
case of
community.
Sephardic Jews, yes, you have to go to your local community and ask for a document saying, explaining how you belong to this, how you have this Sephardic Jew line, and then there's an entity in Portugal that goes through the document and records, and they make sure that if the statement is a good one or not, and according to that decision, the Portuguese authorities, they grant citizenship for the Sephardic Jew heritage.
Okay. All right. So we covered a lot when it comes to citizenship by descent and heritage, but there's also citizenship by investment and citizenship by naturalization, which could come from investment as well. But I'd like to ask Jeff now, before we go into citizenship by investment. Jeff, you have written extensively about citizenship, and I'd like you to give us a few, if you're able to, a few countries perhaps that is on top of your head of where the process of citizenship by naturalization is relatively quick.
One of the quickest countries in the world is Argentina. You can get citizenship by basically citizenship through residency through naturalization after about 2 years. You can also do it theoretically in Peru, but I've read sort of questions of whether that's accurate or not. Theoretically, it's 2 years, but some people say no, it actually takes 4. But Peru is potentially on the list. Canada's 3 years. I think the Dominican Republic is 2 years. And then when you get into Europe, you have a number of 5-year countries. Portugal's on the 5-year list, France, Sweden's on the 5-year list. So there's a variety of places, where you can do it between basically 2 and 5 years. I think in Poland, you can do it in 3 years if you happen to marry a Polish person. And in Uruguay, if you're already married, Uruguay is a really interesting case study, and I'm going to be writing about this in International Living in 2023. But Uruguay is a really interesting case study in that you can go to Uruguay, and if you have the right documents in your possession, the minute you land, you could go from the airport in Montevideo to a lawyer, and you could apply for temporary residency, and you will have your cedula card, your residency card, within about a week, and you become a resident of Uruguay, and you're eligible for the healthcare system and all that kind of fun stuff that quickly. And if you're married, you can become a naturalized citizen of Uruguay with rights to get a passport in 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So I think Uruguay is a really cool sort of case study in sort of immediate plan B. If you had to get out quickly somewhere and you have the right documents, you can be sort of set up and ready to go in Uruguay within a week or so.
And it is a good passport to have, especially if you want to relocate to Uruguay. You have an amazing lifestyle there that kind of mimics, so it's a mixture between the Riviera and there's also a bit of USA there as well, with all the wines by the minerality of the sea and so forth. Yeah,
I think Uruguay is sort of a hidden gem. I don't think, people see Uruguay, it's in South America, and they think Latin. And to a degree, yeah, obviously it is Latin because of where it's located, but it is much more European lifestyle. It's really populated by sort of misplaced Italians and Spaniards. And it has a very European feel to it, particularly when you're in Punta del Este, the sort of party town. 9 months of the year, there's 20,000 people there, and 3 months of the year, there's 500,000 because it's just a sort of party atmosphere in the summer. But it's a beautiful country. It's really easy to get around, incredibly safe, one of the strongest democracies in the world, one of the biggest middle classes in all of the Americas, including the U.S. and Canada. So it's a really interesting country.
I agree. I need to go back there. It's a beautiful country, and as you said, it's a very stable country as well. Right. Okay. So this is very interesting, and we're covering lots of subjects, but we also have a time limit. So I just want to make sure we cover everything that is of relevance to our viewers researching about a second citizenship, a second passport. Okay. So we covered the motives, the ways with the heritage, with the process of citizenship by naturalization. Jeff gave us a very good list of countries where you can obtain it quite quickly. Joana, shall we talk about briefly about citizenship by investment, and then then we will move into the other visas such as a digital nomad visa and so on. But first, let's go with citizenship by investment.
Yeah, for the purpose of citizenship, I think we can do it all together. So. Yeah. There's pure citizenship by investment. We all know about it. You need to complete an investment to obtain directly citizenship. This is the option available mainly in the Caribbean, not exactly in Europe, because in Europe it requires always a path of residence prior to obtaining citizenship. So citizenship by investment sometimes is residence plus naturalization, because it's the end game might be citizenship, but it starts as residence. That's what's happening in Europe right now. And this is, in both cases, we need 5 years, in case of Portugal, 5 years of legal residence to go for citizenship. So 5 years of legal residence, clean background check, and a Portuguese language test. This is more or less what it's necessary. The way to do this 5 year of residence is where we can find several options. There's the investment option. In Portugal is the golden visa. You don't need to exactly stay inside the country. You just need to visit, but you'll be working on your residence towards citizenship. And there's the traditional way, which is relocating to Portugal. This is the way citizenship has been done since ever. The difference is right now in Portugal, we have new options that are trying to be an answer to new trends in the world. So we have the D7, which is based on passive income. So people, even if they are not coming to Portugal to work, they can stay in Portugal just by showing they have enough passive income. And this is something that it's evolving a lot, and we have lots of clients looking for relocation based on passive income from around the world, but lots of clients from the US. And the digital nomad is something very new. It was happening already. It's just like the problem with the visa from Czech Republic, because digital nomads were entering the country under the D7 visa. Mm-hmm. But now the Portuguese government created this new one, the nomad visa, with specific requirements, and now nomads have a specific way of entering the country and being granted with a residence that allows them to work for a company abroad.
Okay.
This is it.
Which would be the case of Jeff. He works for a company remotely, because I think one thing that's important to clarify with the digital nomad visa, and Joana, correct me if I'm wrong, there are it encompasses people who would like to work for a short period of time somewhere. I'm talking about Portugal. Somewhere in Portugal for a couple of months, and which happens a lot. And this was a movement powered by the pandemic, because people wanted to work somewhere and not being in that little apartment in London or New York, and then but you also, there is a pathway to a residency if you want to be a remote worker working from somewhere else, as long as your company is okay with that. So Jeff, do you want to contribute? Do you have any thoughts on that?
When it comes to citizenship by investment, most of the efforts are focused in the Caribbean, because it's a pretty quick process. It takes a couple of months, and it's generally more affordable for most people. It's in the $100,000 to $200,000 range is the investment you're going to have to come up with. You can still do it in Europe in a couple of places, like Malta has a citizenship by investment program. It's probably in the $300,000 to $500,000 range, or maybe $600,000. I can't remember the exact number now. Austria has one, but Austria is really quite expensive. It's $1 million or more. So, most people tend to focus on the Caribbean. I think that population is people who are pursuing citizenship through that path, I think, it's a much smaller subset of humanity, basically. I think there are a ton of people who are now pursuing the digital nomad stuff. This started off in the Caribbean during the COVID year, almost as a trick or a ploy or just sort of a marketing effort by some of the Caribbean nations to say, hey, Americans, you're locked up at home. Why don't you come spend a year abroad, working on the beach and then go home again when everything's okay. That has morphed into real visas. There's a lot of countries who are really announcing some pretty spectacular digital nomad visas that are clearly aimed at bringing people in and allowing them to live there, wanting them to live there, and giving them, a really good pathway. Thailand just opened one. I was in Thailand a couple of months ago. They have probably one of the best in the world right now because it's good for 10 years. I mean, that's pretty amazing in the visa space to have a visa that's valid for 10 years. I would argue that Portugal's got a really good one. I think Italy's about to launch one, or really Italy has launched one that's pretty good. Spain's about to launch one that's going to compete with Portugal, but I think Portugal wins on tax rates. And I think Greece has one as well. Their tax rates are a little higher too, but if you want to live on a Greek island, it's a great way to do it.
I agree. And it's again, Jeff, amazing. You're always giving very good contributions here. We did record the podcast about digital nomad visas and also live, which I think could be useful to our viewers because there are taxation elements that you should be aware of. And so there's a lot of research that you need to do, but there's a host of programs all over the world. Brazil also launched a digital nomad visa recently, and Colombia as well. So worth looking at those two. So yeah, I think we covered everything. There's probably more, but not that we can remember here, in terms of pathways to look for a second passport. But what I've learned from this episode today is that the second passport is definitely an asset. And it's not an asset only for the high net worth individuals. It's basically available to anyone. You just need to research your options. So, as closing lines, what would you give in terms of advice to anyone who is now looking for or watch this episode and think, oh, maybe I could get a second passport? What to do now? What's next?
I would say if you really want a second passport, then begin researching your ancestry, because that's going to be potentially the quickest way to a second passport. If you can prove that you have a parent, or particularly a grandparent, or even a great-grandparent in some European country, you're going to have a much easier path, a much quicker path to a passport. That said, if you can afford it, then, passport by citizenship by investment is really good. Otherwise, just go the naturalization process, starting with some of these digital nomad visas, because, they're good for 1 to 5 years and they can be renewed. And after that, after 5 years in a lot of European countries, you can pursue citizenship and therefore a passport.
Okay, I agree. Let's do that. And about Joana, what do you think? Do you agree? Is that the best? Is there any other?
No, it is. But I think that the first thing is everyone thinking about this subject needs to figure out if the question, their answer to the question, the egg or the chicken. Are they looking for a passport? Or are they looking for immediate relocation? Because this will make the difference. If you just want, if you want a quick passport, a quick exit. Or if you want to relocate, and then you need to figure out, you need to really delve into the country and understand if that country is a good country, because there's tax impacts, there's a lot, it's a huge decision to relocate and to obtain a second passport. So this is something that you need to figure out exactly why you're looking for if you're looking for a second passport or a new country to live in. And I think that's it.
Good, I agree. Very good. And so basically you just need to figure out what you want to do with your life, where do you want to stay, and how to achieve this this objective. But the good thing is to know that there are, again, I keep hitting this microphone, that there are many ways, many pathways available. And so I think that's it. Unfortunately, we have to say goodbye. It was amazing. Thank you very much, Jeff, for making time for us. Joana, thank you again. And I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And I hope you learned as much as I did. And so keep following us, Global Talks. Hit like, subscribe to our channel, and there will be more treats coming on your way. Thank you, and see you soon.